Fabulous. Thank you very much, Jill, and welcome everybody to this morning's event, which is Attracting and Engaging Gen Z, Apprenticeship Engagement through School Outreach. So welcome on behalf of the 5% Club. For those of you who aren't familiar with the 5% Club, we're a skills, charity and employer movement. We've got 860 members across the UK, and those members have in their employ about 1.6, 1.7 million employees, which is about 5% of the UK workforce. And they provide 10% of the UK's apprenticeships to their workers of all ages. This morning, of course, we're focusing on Gen Z, which is some of the workers already in employ, but actually those who are due to join. Why is that important? Well, what's really interesting, we published some of the research that's occurred this week, and we pushed it out on the website from GTI Group. And GTI Group have gone out to look at the attitudes of 11 to 20-year-olds in terms of their attitudes to degrees and apprenticeships. And in that population, which is right in the middle of Gen Z, 75% want to go to university. 10% want to get an apprenticeship. But actually, of those 10% that want to pursue an apprenticeship, 80% of those want to get a degree apprenticeship. So we are in a UK where a degree is definitely seen as a premier pathway, and therefore engaging the workforce of tomorrow on apprenticeships, on the level 2, level 3 pathways into apprenticeships is incredibly important, and changing those attitudes. And that, of course, is in light of findings from law and finance community that's recently shown that actually, compared to traditional pathways into soliciting, or solicitors, not soliciting, that's a bit of a Freudian slip, but into the solicitor career pathway, actually the performance of apprenticeships outshines those on a traditional degree career pathway. So actually, when people get into employ, sometimes apprenticeships, or in many cases, those on apprenticeships outperform. We've got a great panel of speakers with us this morning. We've got Daniel Keller, CEO of Unifrog, one of our sponsor patrons, and we're delighted to be working with Unifrog in terms of exploring this, and indeed some of the work we've got occurring over the latter part of the summer. We've got Natasha Roberts, who's engaged in sixth form, and Natasha is sat lonely in her sixth form office at the moment, but she will be joined by Matt, we hope. And the reason we hope she'll be joined by Matt is actually just finishing his last A-level. So Matt's got a toss-up between joining us for this webinar or indeed going to the pub because he's 18. We do hope he comes to us. And then we've got Jordan Denney, who's a talent engagement officer from PwC, and she'll give us some real-world examples of that. And we've got some special guests in the audience as well. We've got Charis Willis, who I've worked with and works with our founder, Balfour Beatty. And Charis is a degree apprentice. And when we spoke, she was actually recruited via the Unifrog platform. So if we struggle for questions later, which I somehow doubt, we'll try and loop Charis into discussion. So without further ado, welcome. And I'll now hand you over to Daniel from Unifrog, who will take us through some of the latest research they've got on Gen Z attitudes to the workplace and apprenticeships. Dan, over to you.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Cool. I'll just share my screen and bring up a few slides that I'm gonna run through just to help illustrate what I'm gonna be talking through. So if I just share my screen, and hopefully you can see that okay. Cool. Sweet. I'll kick off just very quickly with a bit of an introduction then. So yeah, my name is Dan. I'm the CEO of Unifrog, and Unifrog's the Universal Destinations platform. So if you're not familiar with us, we're essentially an online platform, and we support students to find the best next step for them after school or college. And that's really whatever that might be. So whether that's further education route, apprenticeships, straight into the world of work, university courses, the whole spectrum really. And what I wanted to do today is basically share a few sort of insights that we thought would be quite interesting and useful for you. And then once I've sort of taken you through that, I'll be handing over to Tash and to Jordan to sort of hear a little bit more about all of this in practice, I guess. So you can, rather than just hearing about it in the abstract, hear about what's happening on the ground with teachers, with students, and then also how sort of a major employer like PwC is reacting to this and what they're putting in place. So hope you find this really useful. Just to kind of kick off then, so I suppose just to give you a sense of why we hopefully have some interesting insights and what we can share with you. So in terms of our reach and what we do, so we're now working with just over 3,500 schools and colleges around the world. The bulk of those are within the UK. So we're working with roughly half of all secondary schools and colleges in the UK now. So we're the platform they use for all of their students to explore different career pathways, build up a profile of their different kind of skills and activities that they've done, and then start to actually search for specific opportunities out there and get their applications for those. We also work with, you can see here, we work with international schools in a lot of different countries as well. So we have about 800 different international school partners around the globe. And we have 1.6 million active student users on the platform. And I suppose what that means is when it comes to our insights, we've got some really rich and interesting data in terms of what young people are interested in, the kinds of things they're looking at that we can sort of bring to the table to help give a real sense of what's important to young people. In addition to what they're doing on the platform, we also run surveys quite frequently. So quite a lot of what I'm going to be talking through this morning is based on quite a recent student survey that we did. So I'll be sort of getting into that a little bit more. One other thing I'll maybe just add here as well is in terms of the impact that we're having, one thing that I've just drawn out there is an initial study that we've done in terms of looking at some of the impact we have with schools is that when looking at students who aren't finding a sort of a next step in terms of education, employment or training, so students that are becoming sort of NEET is the term there, students not finding a next step, the impact we're having across the body of schools that we're working with is having a really significant impact there in terms of more students finding a next step after school or college. So it's been really cool to see that. But yeah, I'll dive into our insights a little bit more. So I mentioned the platform insights, but then in terms of our student surveys, most of what's I'm going to be running through in these slides is coming out of a student survey that we ran just a few months ago. So we had over 11,000 respondents, and it's pretty sort of nationwide distribution. So this is just students in the UK that we were asking these questions. The questions ranged across a whole bunch of different topics. So all kinds of different things. And the main reason we do that is to really try and get a sense of when it comes to content on the platform and the different events we run, because in addition to the online platform, we run a lot of different events for students and teachers. It helps us just to curate those to make sure that what we're putting on is as useful as possible for young people. So here's just one sort of example of that, I guess, which we drew out, which is quite interesting. I think the average age at the minute in terms of people actually purchasing their first flat or home is well into their 30s now. So I think this was quite noticeable for us, was just kind of one of the questions here that I think is certainly going to inform some of the content and stuff that we're building out and putting on the platform to help young people when it comes to thinking about sort of their finances and next steps. So just an example there, but I'll now dive into a few bits that are really sort of specific to employers and engaging with Gen Z. So the first of these is one where we asked young people which factor is most important when considering a career pathway. And so you can see here that the top one, which I thought was quite interesting here, was having a good work-life balance. And that was quite quickly followed by high salary, perhaps not super surprising. There were some other ones on here that I didn't include on the chart. So a couple of things like becoming famous cropped up a little bit, but not very much, as well as working for a well-known company cropped up just like a tiny amount. But these were the sort of the really big ones, essentially. And I guess two of the sort of takeaways here just quickly, I suppose, to be thinking about is one, when it comes to this first one that scored highest in terms of good sort of work-life balance, is the extent to which when it comes to the different sort of pathways that you're offering young people, whether that's apprenticeships or also, I guess, like graduate pathways, things like that, to what extent are you talking about your work culture and talking about supporting employee well-being and making that sort of a serious part of the information you're putting out there when emphasizing the different pathways you've got and the sort of kind of, elements, like I say, of that work culture, I guess. Another one that we see quite a bit linked to salary. So I mentioned about platform data as well. So in addition to our survey, one of the tools we have on the platform is a tool where we have all the different apprenticeship opportunities that are out there for young people to contrast and compare on lots of different factors. And the most popular factor that students sort by is weekly wage. not super surprising, but what's really interesting is the data that's published and that we pull in. For quite a few employers, they do state specifically what that weekly wage is, but quite a few just say something like competitive. And the amount of opportunities that end up getting shortlisted after students are ranking by these different opportunities and then thinking about that, it's the ones where employers are being more transparent, stating exactly what young people are going to earn, because competitive, it's, you know, if you have very little sort of sense of what a competitive salary looks like and comparing these things when it comes to the world of work, actually being transparent and helping young people to have a real sense of what they are going to be earning is super, super important. And that does connect with the actual opportunities they start shortlisting and ultimately applying to on the platform. Cool. Some other things that we asked them about. So a big one was, who do you find it most useful to hear from? And I'm afraid that sadly recruitment and admissions teams weren't the very top of that list, but it's people that young people can actually relate to. So current apprentices and young professionals who've probably gone on a similar journey quite recently, talking about that, the different things that they were weighing up, perhaps the different sort of preconceptions and stuff that they had about a certain pathway, and then how they actually found that and what does a day in their life look like for them now. Those are the sorts of things that we're really hearing young people find most useful when it comes to shaping their own decisions. And then the second bullet that I've just got here relates more to the platform again. So another of the tools that we have for students using the Unifrog platform is our know-how library. So this is a massive repository of loads of different guides, lots of different content. It ranges from application tips through to things on like financial advice, all kinds of different stuff. But over a third of the 100 most viewed guides, so the different sort of videos and articles we have there, cover topics like diversity and inclusion and sustainability, topics which we're finding cropping up kind of all the time, being sort of top of the list, things that again are important to young people. And I suppose another one in there as well that crops up a lot near the top of that list is well-being, which sort of links back to those survey findings I mentioned before around kind of work-life balance and that being a really important factor. Another one that we asked students that I thought would be a cool one to bring to your attention is we asked them, which skill do students think employers value the most? The percentages here are quite low because we just asked them to choose one skill, but it was quite clear that communication sort of came out top here, although quite a few votes for a lot of these others. I'll be really interested, and I think it would be good to know in sort of follow-ups or in the kind of the comments or Q&A afterwards, some of the things that you value most. And when it comes to some of our future surveys, we'd be super interested to hear some more from a whole range of employers around the skills that are most important to you, and we can do a bit more work about kind of aligning those. But one thing that we thought was really interesting here is in the survey. So we had lots of students saying, yeah, communication is the thing that I think employers value the most. But then when we looked at the platform data, again, to highlight another of our tools that we have, is essentially a sort of self-evaluation quiz for different skills. So students can go through, we ask them a whole bunch of different questions about how comfortable they feel about doing all kinds of different things that relate to a bunch of key skills. And quite interesting, of the 23 different key skills we asked about, we found that written communication came sort of 14th and spoken communication as low as 19th in terms of the skills. If you sort of ordered them, these 23 skills, and how competent students felt they were at those things. So although students feel that communication's a really important one for employers, in terms of how they sort of rate their own ability at those, it's really quite low in the sort of overall spectrum of different skills. And we see that as well in terms of students recording skills as they build up their profile on the platform, that skills relating to communication are certainly sort of in the lower half of those getting recorded at kind of a higher level. So quite an interesting disparity there, which I guess I'll maybe just jump onto pulling some of this together, because my last point here relates to that. But like I said, I sort of wanted to flag a few different things and kind of kick off this session by raising some of these points. Then we'll dive into a bit more discussion around them. But a few that I'll just sort of, summarize here. So there was the point about good work-life balance. And question, I think, there for you is, to what extent are you promoting your well-being strategies and work culture? Making sure that when you're engaging with schools and students, you're getting the right people in front of students so that they're actually hearing from people they can relate to make really informed choices. And then on this last point, we thought it was really interesting, like I said, this disparity between the value placed on communication, but then actually competence around that skill set. And so I think if you're doing any work with young people, with schools, then thinking about different ways that you can help them to develop these skills, and whether that's through work experience or you're going in to run a workshop. And a lot of the stuff that we do to help connect employers and schools at Unifrog is to help sort of facilitate sessions like that, really thinking about how can you be supporting the next generation to develop some of these key skills. And I'm using communication as an example here, but I'm sure, like I said, there are going to be other skills here that you really value, and it's making sure that you're doing work with young people to help them to develop those. Cool. That's sort of everything from me just for now, but very happy to come back and chat through some of this in the Q&A. But I think there'll be some really interesting insights that we'll hear from Tash and Matt, and then also from Jordan. So keen to hand over to them shortly. I guess the last thing I'll just add is that, if you'd like to learn any more about Unifrog, my email address is just there, daniel@unifrog.org. And whether that's about our data insights, things that you'd like us to ask students in the future, or just to learn a bit more about the work we do with schools, but then also the work we do with employers. So we've started partnering with employers a lot more in the last year or so to help bring them into the Unifrog community and help you to sort of build connections with students, with teachers, so that, it's as easy as possible for students to find the best next step for them. But I will finish there for now and hand back over to Mark.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Daniel, and some really, really powerful insights in that presentation. What I would just draw out is we've got some previous research from WSP, one of our patron members, that echoes what Daniel says about career pathways, attractiveness through wages and transparency over wages. So to encourage people to a sector, wage transparency is important, but keeping them is particularly all about well-being. I was just waffling a bit there as a bit of a link, but I'm really pleased that Matt has finished his exam and has joined Natasha. So that means we're in a great space to hand over to Natasha to get the view of this whole discussion in Gen Z attitudes from a school perspective, and through a neat little interview with Matt. So Matt, I hope you're not too frazzled from your last A level. You've got a big smile, so there's a relief. Natasha, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, that's great. It's really nice to be able to be here and speak to so many employers and actually give you the opportunity here to meet myself and Matt. But the thing is, he has just walked out of his last exam, so I haven't even spoken to him yet, and I am one of his teachers, so I've got to ask how it went, Matt.
It went well.
It went well.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, okay. He's got a big smile. So all the friends have now disappeared and he's here giving up his time. So I thought what would be helpful this morning is literally Matt and I are just going to chat away really about what his experience has been like since he started as a sixth form with us. I'm a assistant head at Melton Vale Sixth Form College. I'm also the careers lead. I oversee all destinations planning for young people. Matt's just finished year 13, so he's been here for 2 years. We are a college of about 450 students in rural Leicestershire, Melton Mowbray, if you know this part of the country. And what's really interesting is the statistic that Mark referenced at the beginning, about 75% of young people want a traditional route of university, 10% wanting to have an apprenticeship. Actually, here at Melton Vale, we've been quite at the forefront of young people switching away from traditional university routes. And when I actually look at the stats here for our college, I'm now on about 65% and sort of 30% wanting apprenticeship routes. But you are right, when young people want apprenticeships, they do want to be reaching up to the degree level. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Matt to you. So Matt, can you just say what A levels you've completed with us at MV?
So I've just finished sport, economics and business.
Okay, and tell us what you're going on to do now you're going to have completed those A-levels.
So I'm going on to do a degree apprenticeship in audit with KPMG.
Okay, so Matt is one of our students who has secured and gone through this process over 2 years of coming to us as a year 12 student, really not knowing exactly, I think not even knowing what a degree apprenticeship was.
I thought the only options were university or straight into work.
And basically, we've taken him through this journey. And a bit of a plug to Unifrog. We've been using Unifrog for 7 years now, and we launched the Unifrog platform with our year 12 students after they've just been here for 6 weeks. So they are literally year 11s, fresh-faced, done their GCSEs. But because this journey is so quick during the sixth form, it's literally 5 terms. We are introducing what's your post-18 pathway going to be, really when they've only just finished their GCSEs. So very soon, I launched that in mid-October. We are introducing it to both parents and young people. Now start thinking about what you're going to do once you've actually finished this journey, even though you've only just started it. Okay, so Matt, when you joined us, what did you think you were going to be doing after your A-levels? Can you just talk us through what your thoughts were, what you were interested in, why you chose those A-levels?
So coming into sixth form, careers-wise, I always thought I'd go to university, but I think deep down I knew that it wasn't exactly what I really wanted. So I just picked subjects I was interested in. I've always liked business, obviously sport, and then I did a bit of reading into economics, and I've always been interested in the news and the real world. That was why I picked that. And then my interest in sort of finance, I think it was always there going through business and economics, but it was really stuff like the Unifrog personality quizzes and stuff like that that helped me align what I didn't realise within myself was what I was interested in.
Okay, so when were you first introduced to apprenticeships, and what sparked your interest? What was it that made you think, yes, this is what I want to do, rather than university?
So it would have been National Apprenticeship Week, where we had loads of guest speakers in, alumni from the college who come in, and that was the first time I'd even heard of a degree apprenticeship, and I almost thought it was too good to be true. But then I kept going to more alumni events and really opened my eyes to that was more options than just university.
What was it that what was it that made you think, yes, that is an option for me? Were there particular elements of studying and working? We're a big, earn as you learn is the phrase that we tend to use around this route. But what were there some particular things that you remember from hearing our ex-students talk about their routes?
Yeah, I think it was, like you said, the earn and you learn, but the fact that they were seen as just as valuable by their business. They were a full-time employee in work whilst still better in their career. I think I really looked to have that in my work life, to be still better in myself, but be valued and in a full-time job.
Okay, so it's quite interesting what Dan said from Unifrog about earning. Why is that important to you, to be going off and having some money in your pocket?
Because you're a student, you don't have a lot of money. Like you were saying about a competitive salary, it is, I think, off-putting to put in that initial application, because you want progression and good work-life balance, but as someone who's not had a full-time job, probably not had a lot of money in their pocket, it is important to students to earn money.
And within your peer group, what's everybody else, your kind of circle of friends, what are they going off to do?
It's quite a wide mixture. I'd say probably still 75% are going to uni, but there is a lot more interest and openness to apprenticeships.
Yeah, okay. So what exactly, can you talk us through the process then? So did you just apply for KPMG?
No, I think I sent off probably 10 applications. Probably 10 applications, just because I know how competitive it is. I just sent off as many as I could, and if I get accepted to more than one, then that would be great, because I could pick. But I was really just covering all bases, really trying to apply to ensure that I would get an apprenticeship.
Okay, so tell us, are you able to tell us some of the other companies that you applied for?
Yeah, so I've applied to places like Mazars, BDO, I applied to NatWest in banking, and Cooper Parry, I applied to there. But I just thought anything that I saw that I was interested in, I applied to.
Okay. And how was the process then? And from your side, I mean, we've talked about this quite a lot, but how did you find the process? What were you being asked to do? What did you like about it? What did you transfer from one application to another? That sort of thing.
I was quite surprised by the process actually, because of how in-depth and detailed it is. You know, I'd sent off my initial application, and then I was being hit with tests and situational analysis, but I did enjoy that because I think my personal skills come out well in stuff like tests and analysis and things like that. But I think for some students, they benefit more from face-to-face contact, especially with some future apprenticeship candidates I've spoke to. They enjoy more face-to-face and speaking with actual employers. And
how did they vary from company to company?
Most were very, very similar. Because accountancy is very maths based, the first test would be straight away testing your maths to see if you could do the work, and then you'd be put into a situation to see how you function more as a person, and then it moved to virtual workshops, interacting with other apprentices and senior people at the company.
Okay, so what did you particularly enjoy during this process? When did you start to get excited about this being your future? Were there some trigger points where you thought, yeah, this is good, I'm looking forward to this?
I think it was the virtual workshops, because as you're doing stuff online, tests with no interactions, there's no real feel that you're moving into a job. But when I got in that, you know, the professional environment of being in a Teams call with 50 future candidates and 10 people who currently work at KPMG or other businesses, that was really when I realised, you know, this is the real thing. This is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the Q&A here. I've got the questions just popped up. But what was attracting you to apply to certain companies? So why did you choose Cooper? I mean, I know the answer to this, but what was it that attracted you to certain companies?
Well, I think it varied on what that company was good at, because some I looked at, you know, the work-life balance, like you said, but I also didn't want to feel like an apprentice. I wanted to feel valued where I went. I wanted to feel like I was part of the team rather than just the new apprentice. Whereas obviously places like KPMG is a huge company, so you look towards that opportunity. But I think mainly it would have been obviously the salary, the work-life balance, and feeling valued was a big one for me specifically.
Yeah, and the opportunity, I know what you've said to me in the past, is the opportunity that you were feeling immediately. You were interacting with senior people,
yeah,
and you felt that it was being taken so seriously. What about when you've spoken to on these virtual workshops? Was that a good part of it, having the opportunity to meet with other apprentices? Because obviously you're only within your Melton Vale college community at the minute.
Yeah, definitely, because you know they're going through the exact same thing as you, and it's good to interact with them. You can pick up things that you might have not done before from the apprentices, and although you're competing against them, they're actually really helpful in general, just helping you through the process. And
yeah, and in terms of, you know, friends that are going off to uni and you're going to be at work, how are you feeling about that when you're going to see their social media and they're out night clubbing on a Wednesday night after they've played? Because you're a big sportsman, so sport is a big important thing to you. And how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, initially I was, you know, very disheartened by it, but there's tons of social events that go on at work that people like me in college don't even realise are happening. And I think that's why the work-life balance is such a big thing for future candidates, because they are giving up, you know, the uni life, the going to uni and being with their friends. So it was disheartening at first, but as soon as I learned the opportunities that were available, but I've confirmed for KPMG, and I've already been asked if I'll be open to coming to summer events and social events. So I think the loss of the social life isn't as much as you think.
But you've got to know about it. It's got to be promoted to you. It's got to be something to attract away. And really just thinking about your parents now, how were they involved in it? You would be first generation to university. So can you just tell me a little bit about their involvement and their support?
Well, I think because I would have been first generation to university, they weren't as forceful in trying to make me go. Whereas, I know some people where their parents and their grandparents have all been to university, but I think initially they sort of didn't believe the degree apprenticeships were a thing. They thought they were too good to be true. So I think involving them and then getting the support from them was really motivating to me that, this is something that I can do, because parent support is something you look for massively.
You see, that's something that working in schools has shifted in the last, even pre-pandemic, in the last 10 years. I've worked in sixth forms for over 25 years, and what I've seen is that parents want to be more involved, more and more involved. When I went off to university, I did my open days on my own. I don't think my parents even knew what I was applying for. But now there is very much this involvement. So my careers programme educates parents at the same time as educating young people as to the different pathways. And I just think that's something that we can pick up on today. I'm conscious of time. I'm getting my time reminder. So we've got 2 minutes left. So Matt, you've got this amazing audience here of future employers. What do you want to say as a Gen Z that they should be doing to get the best? KPMG have snapped you up, but how could the rest have attracted you?
Like I say, I think transparency, especially with salary, because that is something that a student will look for, but also, like I said, I wanted to feel valued. I wanted to feel like it was something that was actually going to be beneficial to me for my whole life, not just the 4 or 5 years that the course is. So I think because giving up uni is such a big decision and going against so many norms, I think, it needs to be worth their while, and you need to reassure them that it is going to be the opportunity that it is.
Okay, I think that's a great way to finish. So we are more than happy to answer any questions, either for myself in terms of how we work with Gen Z, or obviously I think Matt is the most valuable resource, really. So I'll turn our mic.
Awesome, thank you so much, Natasha, and thank you, Matt, for sticking with that line of questioning. I think there were some really, really powerful insights that came out of that, which I think really echoed and brought to life many of the points that Daniel had made in his opening remarks. In particular, your point about 10 applications, that's 10 different application processes versus one UCAS application for university. And I think also that powerful point about parental support and parental pride and how that can have an impact on the pathway. It's interesting you call it the norm. I think, from our perspective in the 5% club, the norm is the pathway that's right for you, not the pathway that other people take huge amounts of pride in. But I'm sure your parents are incredibly proud of what you've achieved, because leaving school at 18 and getting on a degree apprenticeship is a massive achievement. So very, very well done.
Mark, can I just add in one thing? The students I have that are going on to engineering apprenticeships, some of them have applied for up to 30. So actually 10 for Matt is a low number compared to some of the students, some of his peer group.
And we're on a mission, which we might mention later, about we've got a hackathon actually with employers in July with Unifrog to look at how we can move to a single application, which actually makes life so much easier, particularly for individuals without parental support, which from some populations are what we're talking about. Unfortunately, Matt, you were talking about KPMG, and KPMG are one of the big four when it comes to audit, and we're very pleased that KPMG are members of the 5% club. But I'd like to invite Jordan Denney from PwC, who are, of course, one of the main competitors of KPMG, to give us her insights from life as an employer and working with Gen Z, depending on how you talk it. So over to you, Jordan.
Thank you so much. And I was going to say big congratulations, Matt, but I will forgive you for not mentioning PwC in there. Huge congratulations. So hello, everybody. My name is Jordan. I work at PwC in our talent engagement schools recruitment team. So my role really focuses right now on our outreach that we do kind of for 15 to 18-year-olds, whether that be events with partnerships like Unifrog, careers fairs, and also our work experience and insight programs. So a little bit about me, and I'll be going through today just some ways in which we as a company have things that we've learned and ways that we engage with schools and students of the Gen Z era. It is an extremely different generation than we've seen previously, and there are some learnings that we've taken away, and hopefully I'll be able to share a bit of insight with you today. So I've kind of picked out 3 key themes for Gen Z. So hybrid engagement is the first one. It's absolutely no secret that Gen Z have grown up in the era of innovative technology, and thus are digital natives. I don't know about you, but my 3-year-old niece knows how to operate an iPad better than me, or better than I ever could. So this generation doesn't solely only want to engage with employers online. We have found that a hybrid approach does suit slightly more. And I think a lot of that comes from, yes, they are Gen Z, and they, as I said, they're digital natives, but they're the generation that's been really impacted by COVID. Through kind of the childhood, teenage and early adulthood, where literally everything was online. So striking that balance between wanting the one-on-one in-person experience, which we've seen generations previous really focus on to a greater extent. They're wanting that, but they're also responding really well to the option of accessing employers from home and on demand as well. So if you can, offer students the choice, and offer students the kind of both options. This is one of the key reasons why at PwC this year we have launched our first in-person work experience programme for Year 12s since pre-2019. So we've had a virtual offering for since 2020 onwards. We're continuing that virtual offering this year, but we are introducing an in-person programme to really start building our in-person brand again, since everybody's kind of come out of lockdown, and we're recognizing that Gen Z still wants to engage with employers in a face-to-face, one-to-one scenario, more so than they perhaps would have done if the pandemic hadn't happened. And we're also continuing to engage with partner organisations such as Unifrog in both in-person and virtual settings. So that includes having students into our offices so that they can see what we're about, see our work culture, but it also involves hosting virtual panel events and doing some kind of virtual tours around the office and things like that. So I would say that hybrid engagement is worked really well for us thus far. And for those that do prefer to engage with employers virtually, you do have to consider that digital fatigue that many students are facing and how you go about combating this without forcing them into in-person settings. So utilisation of innovative technologies outside of the usual live stream virtual meeting technology, so Google Meet, Zoom, that type of thing, will serve its purpose, and it'll also serve to kind of impress the students that you're a company that really embraces digital technology. So for the generation where TikTok is the new Google, and Roblox is a new source of gaming and social media, we as employers do need to start thinking out the box. So some of you may have seen that at PwC we've generated the PwC Virtual Park to engage with students. Anybody that plays Sims or has played Sims, it's kind of like that. You make an avatar, you can walk around, you can chat with people in real time. And we're also expanding our advertising campaigns to platforms such as TikTok to reach those right demographics as well. And everything I've said is also reflective of what Natasha's just said about ensuring that translates to parents and teachers, because although students are heavily influenced by parents, carers and teachers on topics such as their career options, they will also influence parents, carers and teachers on their behaviours, meaning that those key influencers often want the same things as students or want to engage in the same ways. So we suggest things like being present and available at in-person events where those key influencers are going to be. For example, we've built some really strong relationships with schools after meeting them at large careers fairs, so the likes of like UCAS, National Apprenticeship Show, and we're engaging with teachers and parents on a really large scale at those types of events. And we all know how busy and stretched particularly teachers are at the moment, and often careers is just one thing in a very long list of roles that they need to play in schools. So we try to make it easy for them, and Natasha, you can tell me if we're doing it in the right way, and we try to make it easy for them by making like on-demand content available on our website. So at PwC, we've created kind of lesson plans on key skills for teachers to use in the classroom, as well as like recordings of sessions such as our career opportunities and a careers podcast as well that students can listen to in their own time or inform time and things like that. And then we're also going back to schools for the first time since 2019. So the demand from schools to have employer-led presentations has increased considerably over the past 18 months. But that doesn't mean you need to go to all of them. Nobody has the resource to go to every single school and college in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So our top tip is to think about what your strategic priorities are and what the demographic of students is that you're trying to reach, and create a decision-making process on that basis. And we've found a strong need to balance this with kind of wanting to go to all these schools and engage with them with the time and resource limitations, as well as what locations we're hiring into in a particular year. So this year, for example, we've got, for the first time, we've opened up for applications in Cardiff for school and college leavers. It's the first time we've done it. So then we're really focusing on our like outreach in that area. But that's just a few of the ways in which we make decisions about how to target schools. We also think about things like targeting schools with higher than average free school meals or pupil premium, where we're getting most applications from, and yeah, those types of criteria, I guess. The next topic that I want to cover, and I know it's been mentioned quite a lot already by Dan and by Matt and by Natasha, is for Gen Z, a huge priority is to have that work-life balance when they enter the workforce. And you'll have seen it in Dan's the graph that Dan showed. So if your company does offer the flexible working policy, for example, it might be another area of work-life balance, leverage it in your attraction campaign for these students. Make them really aware of what that culture is, what the work-life balance looks like. So an example that we've done is that at PwC, we have something called the Deal, which is our employee value proposition that looks at flexible working, looks at the expectations of our employees and expectations of what the business gives us in by way of flexibility. And we've used that in our attraction campaign to give a sense of our working culture, but also to retain the talent when they're in the business. And it really focuses on things like we had summer working hours over the past couple of years where we have condensed working hours to 4.5 days, so we finish early on a Friday. It's things like, how many times do I need to go into the office? Can I work from home 2-3 days a week? So it is really difficult for students to get a strong sense of a company culture when they're not in the role, and strong sense of what the actual job entails. So we try to show students exactly what it's like to work for our company, including how the firm engages with employees to strike that work-life balance. So a couple of suggestions could be like day in the life blogs that you post on social media or that you have on your website, takeovers from current apprentices, because like we've said, students don't really want to hear from recruitment. They want to hear from ambassadors that are actually doing it. So if they're able to see this is what I might be doing as a, let's say, audit apprentice, and this is what time I might get into the office, and this is what I might wear, and this is the types of technology I might be engaging with. That really gives students a sense of your culture, but also an awareness of the roles that you're offering, as well as that work-life balance offering that is also important to them. And I will say that this is really important that it translates to the post-offer process as well. We have a keep warm strategy, I'm sure that a lot of the companies do, and translating that attraction campaign work-life balance to actually the onboarding process. So in those pre-joiner events, that when you invite them into the office, really try and give them a sense of belonging by explaining to them, this is what a typical day might look like. You might get into the office at 8:30 and finish at 4:30, and go out for a social. And that's the types of things that these students are really feeding back to us that they want to know about. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll quickly move on. And the last thing I wanted to point out was appealing to interests and priorities. So Dan mentioned it in the slide about finding kind of work with a positive impact is really important for students in that Unifrog survey. So ESG is one of the kind of biggest and most topical areas and biggest priority for this generation. So ESG may appear to be kind of a bit of a trend or a phase in the industry, but at PwC, we truly think it's here to stay. It's not only a hot topic in the industry, we're seeing a lot of like green jobs, which solely focus on sustainability issues, but it's also a really hot topic for Gen Z. Like Dan said earlier, it's one of the most read articles on their platform about sustainability. So you can see that it's a super important topic for these students. So try and embed sustainability into your campaigns where you can, as this will land really well with students. Also increases their engagement with the brand. So things that we've done that we've really promoted are our eco booth, which is a completely sustainable kind of recruitment structure that we transported across lots of different schools and universities across the country, and it was all recycled materials and it was all recyclable as well. We offset all our carbon emissions, and we have sustainability case studies at events and work experience. We have sustainable freebies at careers fairs, so kind of the metal drinking straws, drinks made from wonky fruit that we use with our social enterprises. So try and embed it as much as you can, because we all have a responsibility to be sustainable in our recruitment campaigns, but it'll also serve you really well when it comes to how it lands with students and that engagement with the brand. And then lastly, I would just say inclusion and diversity. Again, Dan reflected on it earlier about this is a key priority for Gen Z. It's top of their wish lists. So it's really important if you are looking to hire a really diverse cohort of students in order to improve diversity of thought with throughout your organisation. So at minimum, I would say ensure there is a really diverse range of representatives and ambassadors at your events, and in your branding as well. So on the website, on any leaflets you put out on social media, blog posts, make sure that students can see themselves working for you, because if they won't, they just won't apply. They won't say, okay, there's nobody that looks, sounds, acts like me at your organisation, so why should I apply? I don't see myself at your organisation. So you might be missing on that, out on that top talent, and also that diverse talent that's going to bring you the diversity of thought that we all seek. And we have gone further by drawing on things like the recent establishment of the PwC Black Network, and our involvement in sponsorship of things like Pride events across the country to ensure that students can see themselves at PwC no matter what their background and how they identify. So just ensuring that it's kind of reflective of your culture, because students aren't just relying on an employer's website anymore to get a taste of what it's like to work for you. They are searching things like Glassdoor to find out the reality of working at a company, speaking to alumni. So you can do all the sustainable involvement in your attraction campaign. You can kind of put the most diverse talent in your at your events. But if then when a student goes and says, okay, what do people say online about this employer? If it's not actually reflective of what your culture is, they're not going to see you as an authentic employer. And that is also a really key point for students, making sure that employers are authentic. So I'll wrap up there because I know we're short on time, but thank you so much and happy to take any questions.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jordan. And it's really great to hear from PwC. And you mentioned High Flyers Research. The reason, you know, that it's great to have you on board is as a graduate recruiter for, I know, the last 10 years, PwC has been the destination of choice for most undergraduates. So you speak with authority, and clearly you're doing something great. But also through our own employer audit, which is done by High Flyers Research as well, PwC came out as our Employer of the Year, and you're double gold in the employer audit. So it's really great that you're able to share those insights, because it's quite clear that across all you do, that you are quite an exemplar of good stroke best practice in this space. We've got a few questions, and there'll be a voice from above in a moment, which will be Jill with questions. But I've picked up on one of the questions in chat, which is, I know we've talked about sixth form students and we've talked about Gen Z and reaching back to 11-year-olds. But actually, one of the questions is, you know, is there a role to reach into primary schools? At which point, you know, there's this view that people's careers are sort of matched. I know it's a balance of return on investment. We can't do anything. But Dan, just coming to you, have you got any perspectives on primary schools and the reach there, and you know, how kids are making up, or young people, young children are making up their early impressions on careers?
Yeah. I think it's that scenario which, until basically the sense I have, so we pretty much mainly work with secondary schools at the moment, although we have been involved a little bit more recently with a few working groups in a couple of different areas around engaging more with primary schools and younger students. And it does seem that in the last sort of, say, like 2 to 3 years, there has been more and more more of a growing sense that more needs to be done basically at that younger age group to help students start to understand about different pathways, what different jobs look like. I mean, I don't know, Jordan, is there anything that PwC do specifically on that front?
Yeah, so we have started to kind of about the idea, I guess, of engaging with primary schools, and we've actually in the past couple of weeks launched a pilot with some schools in West Yorkshire primary schools to kind of look at what our engagement might look like with them. What I would say is that because there's such a large gap between them kind of hearing from an employer at primary school and then them actually going to apply post 18, it does need to be a more skill focused at that age, rather than this is what your career options are. Kind of starting with those soft skills at primary school age, with a little bit of brand awareness here and there, is what our focus would be. But I think the struggle with employers is that you're not going to see as much ROI with engaging with primary school students as you do the secondary school colleges. So we are currently kind of piloting it, but we'll be interesting to see what the outputs of that are.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And certainly from my perspective, I used to head up recruitment for the Royal Navy, and we did go into primary schools, but actually that was more about community engagement than with the school itself. And that was really focused on the really hard to reach communities that were suspicious of our brand. So that was the way we approached it. I see we've still got 43 participants on. If you've got any questions, please pose them to us. But I'm very conscious that we've also got Charis Willis on the line, who might be able to give a slightly different perspective to Matt, having gone through the recruitment process and is now employed as an apprentice. And I just wonder if the team can get Charis on the line and see if Charis has got any perspectives she's able to share with us from what she's heard, particularly, you know, the points Matt's made in terms of the process he went through. So is Charis there, and we're able to speak to Charis?
Hiya.
Hi, Charis. There's been quite a lot this morning on the line. Is there any points that you'd echo or speak to that certainly Matt raised and some of the other panel members?
Yeah, so thank you for that introduction, Mark. I think I'd say going through the application process for apprenticeships, like Matt said earlier, about having so many different applications, so like 10 different companies. I think for me, it was about between 10 and 20. And sometimes the process can get a bit laborious, especially when you're answering the same sorts of questions, but just slightly differing the format. And so I think that the idea of sort of compiling that into one application, or certainly a lot less than 10, 20 or 30, would be really helpful, and something that could kind of encourage other young people to take apprenticeship and to apply to them. Because I know certainly when I was talking to my friends who were mainly focused on going to university, for them it was just applying on UCAS and then that was it, and it was just waiting to hear back from the universities, and they were sort of glad to not have to put that extra effort and that anxiety that might come with application processes in.
Thank you so much, Charis. That's really helpful, and you know, I can see body language from Natasha and Matt echoes that. Unfortunately, we're out at time this morning, so we've overrun slightly. But I know this whole point about a single application process versus single portal. I know through chat many of you have realised that, you know, you can reach out to Daniel and put your apprenticeships on Unifrog and the other available platforms, but clearly, you know, there's benefit from the data, the exchange, the building of relationships with the young people by considering carefully where you focus your effort and how you move that forward. So we're at 12 o'clock. I'd love to keep this going all day, actually, but I'm very conscious that Matt's got other appointments he needs to get to, which is our absolute focus at the moment. So what I would do on behalf of the 5% Club, on behalf of our sponsor patron Unifrog, and for our fantastic guest speakers this morning, Natasha, Matt, and Jordan, it's really rich discussion. Thank you all for attending, and if you've got any points that you weren't able to ask during this morning's session, please send us an email. We'll always follow up with more information as and when. And clearly, you've got the various email points of contact, particularly with Daniel at Unifrog. So please, you know, thank you so much, and we'll leave it there. If you want to share this session with colleagues, then as Jill mentioned earlier, it is recorded. And we'll see you at some of our future events. So we've got an event next week with a physical event with the London Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, IoT, and London Progression collaboration. There's a lot more details of our forthcoming events. And for those of you who've yet to sign up to our employer audit, we'd love to see you in part of that process as well. So thank you very much. We'll leave it there. And until next time, have a great rest of the week, great weekend, and please enjoy the sun time. But don't forget, slip, slap, slop. Thank you very much.